They told him there were no rooms left until someone else walked in. What they failed to realize was that the man they had so casually dismissed was not merely an ordinary traveler, he was a billionaire, a man with the power to reshape destinies and alter the course of fate itself. That night, as the rain pounded relentlessly against the pavement, his arrival at the Grand Horizon Hotel would mark the beginning of a transformation that extended far beyond a simple change of ownership. It was a stormy evening in Naples, Florida. The rain came down in torrents, drenching the streets and lending the city an almost surreal, glistening quality. In his sleek black SUV, Charles navigated the wet roads with quiet determination. As he pulled into the circular driveway of the Grand Horizon Hotel, the golden glow from the elegant chandeliers spilled onto the rain-soaked pavement. Their light danced on the surface of puddles, creating a shimmering spectacle that evoked an aura of luxury and grandeur. For most, the hotel was a sanctuary, a welcoming haven offering respite and comfort to weary travelers. But on this night, things would not go as expected. Charles stepped out of his vehicle with deliberate grace, adjusting the lapel of his impeccably tailored navy suit. Standing 6'2", his imposing figure was impossible to ignore. Every step he took was measured and confident, his polished shoes echoing softly on the marble as he made his way toward the entrance. The lobby greeted him with a heady mixture of scents. The crisp floral aroma of freshly cut lilies intermingled with the subtler hint of espresso emanating from the nearby lounge. It was a sensory welcome that, under ordinary circumstances, would have felt like an invitation to relax and enjoy the comforts of the Grand Horizon. Approaching the reception desk with an easy smile, Charles spoke in a calm yet warm tone. "Good evening," he said. "I'd like a room for the night. My flight got delayed and I need a place to stay before I catch the next one." His words carried the courteous assurance of a traveler accustomed to luxury and respect. At the desk, a young clerk with slicked-back blonde hair and a name tag that read Evan barely lifted his eyes from the keyboard. His fingers danced slowly and deliberately across the keys as he replied, "I'm sorry, sir, we're fully booked." The tone in his voice was anything but sincere. It was flat, rehearsed, and dismissive. Charles's gaze swept over the lobby. It was unusually quiet, the only sound being the soft chime of the elevator, which indicated the arrival of a solitary other guest. Undeterred, Charles leaned in slightly and asked, "Fully booked, you say? Not even a single room available?" His smile remained unwavering as he waited for a response. At last, Evan looked up. His lips curved into a thin, practiced smile as he confirmed, "That's correct, there's nothing available." No sooner had he finished speaking than the revolving doors swung open. A middle-aged couple entered, each carrying a suitcase. Evan's demeanor shifted instantly. His smile broadened into an overly sweet expression, and his tone took on a syrupy quality as he greeted them. "Welcome to the Grand Horizon," he said. "Do you have a reservation?" The man of the couple shook his head, and Evan nodded enthusiastically. "Not a problem. Let me check for availability." Charles watched silently as Evan resumed typing. Within moments, a room key appeared on the screen, and with a bright, cheerful tone, Evan handed the keycard to the couple, saying, "Enjoy your stay." The couple walked away, and the transaction was complete. Clearing his throat to draw Evan's attention once more, Charles interjected, "I thought you said you were fully booked." For an instant, Evan's eyes flickered with uncertainty, and his practiced smile wavered. I meant we don't have anything that would suit your needs," he stammered. At that moment, Charles felt the weight of the situation settle upon him. It wasn't merely about room availability or the inconvenience of his delayed flight. It was about something far more insidious, a deliberate act of discrimination and prejudice. Yet, despite the sting of that realization, Charles did not allow his expression to betray any emotion. Instead, he straightened his posture and maintained a calm, unreadable face. "Thank you for your time," he said, his voice as composed as it had been upon his arrival. Without a further word, Charles turned on his heel and strode out into the rain. But this departure was not the end of his night. It was the beginning of something much larger. Once outside, he paused under a modest awning, letting the rhythmic patter of raindrops on the canopy fill the silence. He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through a list of nearby hotels, though his attention kept drifting back to the revolving doors behind him. There was something about that scene, a lingering sense of injustice that clung like a faint odor, that would not let him forget. Charles leaned casually against a nearby marble pillar, strategically positioned just out of the lobby's direct view, yet close enough to observe. It wasn't long before his suspicions were confirmed. A young man, probably in his 20s and dressed in worn cargo pants and a faded hoodie, walked into the lobby. His backpack hung low over one shoulder, and he carried the air of a traveler who had seen many miles and borne many hardships. Charles watched intently as the young man approached Evan with the same request he had made moments earlier, a room for the night. Although the conversation between the young man and Evan was inaudible to Charles, the exaggerated nods and overly broad smile of the clerk conveyed all he needed to know. In mere moments, the young man was handed a key card. There were no hesitations, no excuses, just a swift transaction and a courteous farewell. Charles's lips pressed into a firm line as he observed the scene. This was not an inadvertent oversight or a simple mistake, it was an intentional act. He lingered for a moment longer, contemplating his next move. His first instinct was to confront Evan on the spot, to call out the hypocrisy and demand an explanation right there in the lobby. But years spent navigating boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations had taught him the value of restraint. There is a time to speak and a time to act, and on this night, action was required. With that in mind, Charles slipped back into his car. The cool leather seat offered a brief, silent comfort as he drove away, the hotel's golden lights gradually fading in his rearview mirror. As he navigated the rain-slicked streets of Naples, the windshield wipers danced in rhythmic arcs, echoing the steady beat of his newfound resolve. The memory of the hotel's rejection replayed in his mind, not as a wound, but as fuel, a catalyst for change. He wasn't overcome by anger. He knew that anger was a waste of energy. Instead, he felt a sharp, focused determination welling up inside him, a determination forged over decades of building his empire and outsmarting those who underestimated him. Tonight, he vowed he would stand as a living reminder of the value of dignity and justice. After a while, Charles pulled into the parking lot of a modest diner, its bright red neon sign boldly proclaiming Sandy's 24/7 Eats. Inside, the comforting aromas of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon enveloped him like a warm embrace. He slid into a booth by the window, and without delay he pulled out his laptop. A waitress soon approached with a steaming mug of coffee, placing it silently in front of him. With a brief nod of gratitude, Charles began typing furiously. For months, he had been quietly eyeing the Grand Horizon Hotel. The property was part of a struggling chain, and whispers of its impending sale had reached his team during a routine investment meeting. At that time, it had seemed like a small fish in a vast ocean of global ventures. But that fateful night had changed everything. The indignity of being turned away, the sting of discrimination, had ignited a fire within him. In that very moment, he had decided that he would not allow such prejudice to stand unchallenged. Not for himself, and certainly not for anyone else. Within minutes, Charles had dialed his attorney, Lisa Reynolds, a sharp negotiator renowned for her ability to close deals at lightning speed. "Lisa Reynolds," he said in a steady, commanding tone, "I need the paperwork on the Grand Horizon Hotel finalized by sunrise." Lisa's surprise was evident when she echoed, "Sunrise?" But Charles was unwavering. "That's correct," he replied. "Consider it done. Send the paperwork to my phone as soon as it's ready. I'll sign electronically." His tone brooked no argument, and Lisa's prompt affirmative response confirmed that his instructions were clear. As Charles stared out the rain-streaked window, watching droplets race down the glass, he reflected on the earlier encounter. It wasn't enough for him to simply own the hotel. He intended to set an example. His mission was to send a message that actions have consequences, especially when those actions are rooted in prejudice. He worked through the night, meticulously reviewing contracts, calculating every immediate step, and mapping out a strategy for change. By the time the first light of dawn broke, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink, the deal was sealed. The Grand Horizon Hotel was now his. Closing his laptop, Charles took a deep, steady breath. His coffee had grown cold, but he paid it no mind. The real work was just beginning. Morning came with crisp clarity. As the sun's rays glinted off the glass facade of the Grand Horizon, Charles stepped out of his car with a quiet confidence that radiated from him. Dressed sharply in a charcoal grey suit, he adjusted his cufflinks and gazed up at the building, a symbol of exclusivity whose polished exterior had long concealed its flaws. Today, those flaws were to be exposed. Inside the hotel, staff members bustled about, preparing for another day catering to affluent guests. Evan, the front desk clerk whose earlier behavior had been so telling, was already behind the counter. His polished demeanor and rehearsed smile remained in place as he managed the morning rush. Charles, however, took his time, observing the space with fresh eyes. He noted the brief, curious glances exchanged among the staff, expressions of uncertainty, and a subtle hint of apprehension. Perhaps it was the aura of authority that Charles carried, or maybe it was the unspoken promise of change that hung in the air. When Charles finally approached the front desk, Evan's practiced smile reappeared. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" Evan asked politely. Charles did not respond immediately. Instead, he set a small black folder on the counter, its edges sharp and pristine, and slowly opened it to reveal a stack of legal documents, each stamped and signed with meticulous precision. Evan's smile faltered. Confusion flickered across his face. "I'm here to make an introduction," Charles began, in a measured yet firm tone. "My name is Charles Rivers, and as of 6 a.m. this morning, I am the new owner of the Grand Horizon Hotel." The lobby seemed to hold its breath as every staff member, previously absorbed in their tasks, turned their attention toward the front desk. Evan's face drained of color, and his carefully maintained composure crumbled as he tried to process Charles's words. I don't understand," he stammered, his usual slick confidence nowhere to be found. "I'll make it simple," Charles continued, locking his gaze with Evan's. "This hotel is now under my ownership, and last night I had the opportunity to experience firsthand how some of the staff treat potential guests. Let's just say I was thoroughly unimpressed." "Well," he added. Evan's mouth opened in protest, but no words emerged. Raising his hand to silence any further attempts at excuses, Charles stated, "There is no need for further explanation. Actions speak louder than words, and your actions last night spoke volumes." He then turned to address the gathered staff, whose faces now displayed a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. "I believe in running a business that stands for fairness, respect, and inclusivity," Charles declared. "Unfortunately, this hotel has long fallen short of that standard, but that is going to change, starting today." His voice was firm yet not unkind. "You will all have the opportunity to grow with this new chapter, except for those who refuse to treat every guest with the dignity they deserve. I will not tolerate prejudice in any form." At these words, Evan's face flushed a deep red, and he muttered something under his breath, but Charles allowed him no further chance to speak. "Your actions last night have no place in the future of this hotel," Charles said firmly. "You are dismissed, effective immediately." The finality of his command resonated in the lobby. Evan's jaw dropped in shock as he hastily gathered his belongings and stormed out, his face a turbulent mixture of anger and humiliation. Meanwhile, the other staff exchanged glances, some nodding subtly, others whispering among themselves, as a ripple of understanding began to spread throughout the room. Charles felt the shift in the atmosphere. The uncertainty that had once hung heavily in the lobby was now giving way to a glimmer of hope. "Let me be perfectly clear," he said, pacing slowly in front of the reception desk, his tone firm yet measured. "This is not merely about what happened last night. It is about the very culture of this hotel, the message it sends, and the experience it provides to every person who walks through these doors. What transpired last night was not simply a personal slight. It was a manifestation of a much larger problem, a mindset that has no place in this establishment." After pausing to allow his words to sink in, Charles gestured toward a young woman standing near the concierge desk. "And what is your name?" he asked gently. "Leah," she replied in a tentative voice. "Leah," Charles said, offering her a reassuring smile, "you and the rest of this team will undergo comprehensive training to ensure that every guest feels valued, regardless of who they are or where they come from." As Leah nodded slowly, her initial apprehension melting into understanding, Charles could see that the rest of the staff were beginning to relax, their shoulders less rigid, their expressions softening with hope. But Charles had more to say. "I am not here to punish anyone unfairly," he continued. "Mistakes happen, and growth is always possible if you are willing to embrace change." There is a place for you here if you choose to be part of a future built on respect and dignity, but if not, it is better for all of us to part ways now." He allowed the silence to linger for a few precious moments, giving his words time to penetrate deeply into the hearts of those gathered. "This hotel," he proclaimed, "has the potential to be more than just a place to sleep or hold conferences. It can be a beacon, a shining symbol of what true hospitality should be. With the right team, I know we can make that happen." Taking a step back, Charles surveyed the room. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically since his entrance, from one of fear and tension to one imbued with cautious optimism. "I have already set the wheels in motion," he added. "A new general manager will be arriving next week, and renovation plans will commence immediately. This is a fresh start for all of us." Pausing once more to let the gravity of his words settle, he added with a faint smile, "Let's make this hotel something we can all be proud of." In the weeks that followed, the transformation of the Grand Horizon Hotel was nothing short of revolutionary. Construction crews moved in almost immediately, updating every aspect of the property, from the outdated decor to the very infrastructure of the building. Walls that had once felt cold and sterile were repainted in warm, inviting tones, and the lobby was completely transformed into a space that exuded welcome and inclusivity. A place where anyone, regardless of their background, could walk in and feel at home. Charles was a hands-on leader, personally overseeing much of the process. He was not one to issue orders from afar, rather he engaged directly with both the staff and the guests. His energy was infectious, inspiring everyone around him to embrace his vision for a more inclusive future. The training sessions that followed became the cornerstone of the hotel's cultural revolution. Experts were brought in to conduct workshops on diversity, equity, and inclusion, sessions that were less about lecturing and more about engaging in honest, transformative conversations. Staff members shared their personal experiences, confronted long-held biases, and learned how to create an environment of genuine hospitality. Leah, the young concierge whom Charles had first spoken with on that pivotal morning, quickly emerged as a leader among her peers. Her natural empathy and remarkable problem-solving abilities soon earned her a promotion to assistant manager. "I never imagined I'd have such an opportunity," she confided during one of their check-ins, and Charles simply smiled and said, "You earned it." News of the hotel's dramatic turnaround spread quickly. Former guests, driven by curiosity, returned to witness the change for themselves. New guests arrived, drawn not only by the luxurious accommodations but by the palpable atmosphere of kindness and respect that now permeated every interaction at the Grand Horizon. The hotel's formerly tarnished reputation was replaced by one of inclusivity and excellence, a transformation that stood as a testament to the power of change. Charles made it a point to highlight the inspiring stories of his team members, showcasing how they had grown and thrived through the process. Their stories were a powerful demonstration that change was not only possible, it was transformative. On one crisp morning, as Charles stood in the hotel's newly renovated lobby sipping a cup of freshly brewed coffee, he marveled at the scene around him. Sunlight poured through the large windows, illuminating the polished marble floors and the carefully arranged fresh flowers adorning every corner. Guests bustled in and out, each greeted warmly by the attentive staff. Every interaction was a living testament to the hotel's remarkable transformation. Leah approached him once again, this time holding a clipboard. "Mr. Rivers, the final guest survey results are in," she announced. Charles smiled broadly as he set his coffee cup down. "Over 90% of our guests mentioned that the hospitality was the highlight of their stay," he said warmly. "That's exactly what I like to hear. It's not just about the building, it's about the people who make it come alive." As Leah returned to her duties, Charles took a quiet moment to reflect on the journey. What had started as a personal affront, a moment when he was turned away in the pouring rain, had blossomed into a transformative mission that reshaped an entire establishment. That painful moment had become the spark for change, igniting a revolution in attitudes and practices that would ripple far beyond the walls of the Grand Horizon. Meanwhile, Evan, the former front desk clerk whose dismissal had been swift and decisive, was slowly learning his own lessons. News of his termination spread quickly, and his opportunities in the hospitality industry dried up almost overnight. Eventually, he found employment in a much humbler setting, a place where he was forced every day to confront his own prejudices and the consequences of his actions. Over time, he began to understand the weight of the decisions he had made and the lasting impact they had on others. Back at the Grand Horizon one sunny afternoon, as Charles observed the steady flow of guests in the lobby, he noticed a family arriving. The family consisted of parents and 2 young children, and the father bore a striking resemblance to Charles himself. The man paused near the entrance, extended his hand in greeting, and said, "I read about what you did here. It's truly inspiring. Thank you, Mr. Rivers." Charles nodded warmly and replied, "Thank you. This place is for everyone now." The man smiled and added, "That's exactly how it should have always been," before moving on with his family. Charles then turned toward the entrance, his heart lighter than it had been in years. In his life, he had built many things, companies, fortunes, legacies, but this was different. The Grand Horizon Hotel was no longer merely a building. It had become a symbol, a tangible reminder that change begins with a single act of courage and a steadfast belief that every person deserves respect. In the months that followed, the hotel's transformation continued in earnest. Every day, new improvements were made. The once stuffy halls now echoed with laughter and conversation. The transformation was both physical and cultural. The hotel was no longer defined by its old ways, but was reborn as a sanctuary of inclusivity, where every guest was treated with kindness and every staff member was given the opportunity to thrive. Reviews poured in, and word of the hotel's new ethos spread beyond Naples, inspiring others to rethink what hospitality should mean. Charles remained deeply involved in every facet of the transformation. He made it a point to visit every department from housekeeping to the front desk, and he personally thanked each staff member for their efforts. "This hotel is not just about the building," he would say with a sincere smile. "It's about the people who bring it to life." His leadership was defined not by authoritarian commands, but by a quiet determination to create an environment where dignity and respect were paramount. The story of the Grand Horizon's rebirth became a local legend, a tale of one man's resolve to challenge injustice and transform an institution from within. It resonated with people from all walks of life, inspiring others to stand up against discrimination and work toward a future where every individual is treated with the respect they deserve. Even those who had once perpetuated the old ways, like Evan, could not escape the consequences of their actions. Evan, whose career in hospitality had effectively ended after his dismissal, eventually found work in a smaller, less glamorous establishment. There, he was forced to reckon with his own biases and to confront the reality of his past behavior. His gradual transformation served as a cautionary tale, a reminder that actions rooted in prejudice have far-reaching effects. As the Grand Horizon Hotel continued to flourish, Charles's vision for the future became clearer each day. He believed that every guest, regardless of background or circumstance, deserved to feel valued. Success in his eyes was not measured solely by opulent decor or lavish amenities, but by the genuine warmth and kindness that permeated every interaction. The hotel, under his guidance, had become a beacon of hope, a place where the transformative power of empathy and justice was evident in every smile and every act of service. One evening, as the sun set and cast long shadows across the newly renovated lobby, Charles gathered the management team for a final meeting. The room was filled with an atmosphere of optimism and renewed purpose. "We have a unique opportunity before us," Charles said, his voice steady and full of conviction. "This hotel can be a model, not just for the hospitality industry, but for the way we treat every person who walks through these doors. It is our duty to ensure that each guest feels seen, heard, and respected. Our actions here will set a standard for all who follow." The team listened intently and ideas flowed freely. New policies were drafted, training sessions were scheduled, and plans for further improvements were set into motion. The energy in that room was palpable, a shared commitment to building a future rooted in fairness and dignity. As time passed, the Grand Horizon Hotel emerged as a shining example of what could be achieved when one person dared to challenge the status quo. Guests came from far and wide to experience the new spirit of the hotel, and every review, every testimonial served as a powerful affirmation of the changes that had taken place. Charles's legacy, built on decades of hard work and determination, was now interwoven with the story of the hotel's rebirth, a story of transformation, redemption, and hope. Standing one final time in the luminous lobby on a crisp morning, Charles reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He remembered the cold, unyielding rejection of that rainy night, and he recognized that it had been the catalyst for everything that followed. That moment of injustice had ignited a spark, one that had grown into a roaring flame of change. In the end, Charles had turned rejection into revolution, prejudice into progress, and a single act of defiance had reshaped an entire institution. This is the story of the Grand Horizon Hotel, a story of courage, transformation, and the unwavering belief that every person deserves respect. It is a reminder that even in the face of harsh rejection, one can choose to rise, to rebuild, and to create a legacy of kindness and justice that will inspire others for generations to come. And so, as Charles Rivers continued to lead by example, the Grand Horizon Hotel became much more than a building. It became a symbol, a beacon of hope, and a testament to the power of change. Every day, as guests were greeted with warmth and every employee was empowered to grow, the legacy of that rainy night lived on. In every smile, every kind word, and every act of genuine hospitality, the spirit of transformation shone brightly, affirming that true success is measured not in wealth alone, but in the capacity to create a better, more inclusive world.